a very slippery path for our country, and especially given the fact that we are already reeling under a great weight of debt. Just for background's sake, the Kenyan debt currently is going to 12 trillion Kenya shillings, meaning for the last 2.5 years, we are borrowing more than 1 trillion shillings. In fact, if you check at the amount of money that was borrowed last financial year up to end of last month, the government borrowed more money than had been approved by Parliament, and especially in the domestic side of the debt. And therefore, there is an imminent problem that we are under debt distress as a country, and therefore the limitation of the physical space. But even having said that, we have now seen a new cleverness being implemented by the National Treasury and the government in a bid to run away from the spiraling debt that is now endangering our economy. And there is a new term now in Kenya called securitization. And I want to call upon all of us, when you hear a big name, and especially from government, a big Kizungu name, always pay some attention, because that is usually a way of diverting attention from Kenyans. So securitization has been one of those terms, meaning we are now targeting revenues of government and mortgaging them. I talked about fuel levy. Whatever I said starts, that whatever government did through the National Treasury, the Ministry of Transport through KRB, remains illegal. And it remains a scandal that will unravel in this country pretty soon. Because the essence of it and all the characteristics are characteristics of a scandal, not anchored in any law, and of course, that has all the characteristics of profligate borrowing, which is not reflecting anywhere in the government books. But that's not the reason for today's conversation. Today's conversation is based on what happened today morning. Kenyans must have seen that the entire government today was in the Nairobi Securities Exchange floor, ringing the bell for the starting of the secondary trading of what is being called Talanta Infrastructure Fund. It is a 44.8 billion Kenya shillings board. Board, in other terms, is borrowing. When government borrows, it can do treasury bills, it can do bonds, which are either short-term or long-term. Now, since on the side of the book that we already know for government debt is already overstretched, now the government is coming up with these kind of facilities so that we do not seem like our debt is growing, whereas we are basically having another secret book of debt. One secret book was fuel levy. The second secret book, of course, is now this one for Talanta, at the behest of, or under the auspices of the sports fund. What is it? The Kenyan government is borrowing today, or has already borrowed, 44.8 billion Kenya shillings. That money is money to be spent today, but to be paid by Kenyans through taxes, and especially around betting and gambling, for the next 15 years, because most of the taxes or the revenue for the sports fund come from those two kind of areas. So we are spending revenue for the next 15 years today, so that we get political capital out of it today. But Kenyans will pay that loan for the next 15 years. It will be maturing in 2040. Now the interest rate is 15.04%. Those things seem just figures when you see them, but they affect every Kenyan. Because at that rate of 15.04%, it means boards that are paid semi-annually after every 6 months, the government will be paying from the sports fund around 3.4 billion Kenya shillings after every 6 months. So at the maturity of the board in the next 15 years, Kenya will have paid interest rate of 100 billion for a loan of 44.8 billion Kenya shillings. And I'm here wondering, if that cannot make us agree as Kenyans, then what would? Because we are basically mortgaging every stream of government revenue, like Kenya is going anywhere. Kenya will still need sports fund for the next 15 years. What is the urgency of rushing to overburden the country with a 44 billion loan, which upon maturity will be paying more than double on interest rate alone? The other thing that is important in that kind of board is that when it was floated and the public was to participate, if you look at the register of those people who ended up buying in the primary issuance, is that the government realized that the mainstream private sector investors were not interested, because they would ask very direct questions. Questions like, is it sovereign guaranteed, which is no? What if there is a law change in terms of the sports fund in the next 15 years? What if the tendencies of collection of revenues change? Because there were no answers for those questions, the government forced NSSF to invest workers' pension money in this board. And if you look at the investors of this board, you will see the leading in the pack is NSSF. It will be important for leaders. We want to achieve many things and everyone wants progress for our country. But what does it benefit the leadership? To overburden a country and to put a country into this kind of a slippery path, only for us to get political capital today. The same thing is happening even in the road sector. You must have known that there are some roads that are lined up for public-private partnerships. You know those names. This is the fortunate bit is that we want roads in this country for all Kenyans to be constructed. But the unfortunate bit is this, that the same cleverness has now gone into that. Roads now are lined up to be constructed at a PPP using NSSF monies again. It will be important for Kenyans to be told the truth, so that if there is a Kenyan who will get a problem in getting their pension for the next 15 years or many years, then they know that they gave the government permission to misuse pension funds for purposes that are not commercially viable. So the essence of today was basically the issue of the Talanta Infrastructure Fund, from where we see it is a very reckless manner of running the fiscals of a country, because we are now mortgaging income streams of the country. And I can tell you without breaking of an eye that these kind of mechanisms you see, the experienced officers in the National Treasury do not even support it, including the fuel levy securitization. It is only the excitement of some people who are now putting our country in this kind of risk. Any experienced economist, even in the National Treasury, and I'm saying it having been in close interaction, do not support this kind of recklessness. I request the leadership, let us put our country first beyond the convenience of what we want to do in terms of developmental politics. Because Kenya will be here past the next election. We don't need to overheat our economy just because people have to see that something is being done.